Congratulations on your recent $50 spa trip. You sat in a vibrating massage chair, sipped on infused cucumber water, and gladly paid a professional to systematically sand down the exact evolutionary mechanism that allowed your ancestors to survive the harsh realities of the Pleistocene epoch. You look at that smooth, pink, incredibly vulnerable skin on your heel, and you think you have achieved the absolute pinnacle of modern hygiene and social status. In reality, you have just initiated a biomechanical self-destruct sequence. You paid a premium to scrub away your body's ultimate biological armor, just so you could fit your incredibly delicate, baby-soft feet into a $200 pair of brightly colored marshmallow running shoes. And now, your orthopedic surgeon is happily booking his next luxury vacation to the Bahamas, funded entirely by your rapidly deteriorating knee cartilage. We live in a truly bizarre era. We are the most technologically advanced species on the planet, yet we are the only mammals who actively pay money to make ourselves physically weaker, and then pay even more money to medically manage the consequences of that weakness. I am Orion, and you are watching Paleomechanics. Today, we are going to dissect the greatest $200 scam in the modern wellness and footwear industry. We are going to look deep into the fossil record, analyze the mechanical limits of your lower body, and explain exactly why the pipeline from the pedicure chair to the physical therapy clinic is the most predictable, yet highly profitable business model of our century. I promise you, by the end of this analysis, you will realize that you are voluntarily paying a premium to dismantle a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. But before we get to the grim reality of your joints, let us have a little laugh at your shopping habits and your fundamental misunderstanding of the human nervous system. Welcome to Chapter 1. The Neuroscience of the Callus, or why you purposefully blindfolded your brain. Let us talk about the greatest villain of the modern cosmetic industry, the foot callus. For decades, the narrative has been that thick, callous skin is dirty, ugly, and physically desensitizing. The general assumption is that if your skin is as thick as a tire tread, you cannot possibly feel the ground. Therefore, you must obliterate it with pumice stones, aggressive filing, and chemical peels, until your heel looks like it belongs to an infant who has never experienced the unforgiving reality of gravity. But here is the biological truth, and it is a truth backed by a landmark 2019 study published in the journal Nature by evolutionary biologists at Harvard University. A natural callus does not reduce your tactile sensitivity. Let me repeat that, because it entirely invalidates your entire foot care routine. A callus does not make your foot numb. Our ancestors, the Homo erectus, roamed across jagged volcanic rocks, scorching African savannas, and freezing mud with calluses that were easily 20 times thicker than the pathetic little rough patch you just paid a stranger to violently shave off. Yet their mechanoreceptors, the thousands of highly specialized nerve endings buried deep in the soles of their feet, were firing at 100% capacity. You see, you need to think of a natural callus not as a thick wool blanket that muffles sensation, but as a biological smartphone screen protector. It is made of heavily cross-linked keratin. This is the exact same protein structure that forms a rhinoceros horn and a tiger's claws. This keratin shield stops a sharp piece of gravel from puncturing your flesh. But because it is rigid, it flawlessly transmits the mechanical force of that gravel straight into the deep layers of your skin where the nerve endings live. Your brain still gets the exact high definition 4K spatial data it needs to adjust your posture, balance your weight, and protect your joints. It is a perfect, free, custom-built sensory system, but what do? You destroy it. You treat your feet like decorative ornaments, when they are actually highly sophisticated sensory satellites. You scrub away the keratin armor. Your foot is now raw, hypersensitive, and entirely unequipped to deal with the friction of the real world. So what is your modern, civilized solution? You take that biologically castrated foot and plunge it into 3 inches of highly engineered, ultra-plush, shock-absorbing synthetic foam. You have essentially surgically removed your body's natural radar system and replaced it with a sensory deprivation chamber. Those nerve endings in your feet are screaming for data. They are desperately trying to figure out if you are walking on concrete, grass, or uneven gravel. But the thick foam of your expensive running shoe acts like a solid concrete soundproof wall. Your brain is now flying completely blind. It has no idea where the ground is, how hard it is, or what angle it sits at. And here is a fun fact about human biomechanics. When the central nervous system cannot feel the ground, it panics. And when it panics, it commands your legs to smash your feet into the earth even harder, just to get some kind of physical feedback through the foam. You are literally stomping your way through life because you paid to be deaf to the ground. Consider it a modern biological tragedy. Error 404, ground connection not found. Please restart your evolution. Welcome to Chapter 2. Evolution's free Kevlar versus the $50 pedicure. Now that we understand how you have successfully blinded your central nervous system, let us take a microscopic look at the actual physical material you are paying people to destroy. Let us talk about keratinization and the catastrophic modern misunderstanding of what it means to be truly clean. The human body is essentially a lazy, but incredibly brilliant biological accountant. It refuses to spend metabolic energy on anything that is not strictly necessary for your immediate survival. If you sit on a soft couch for 6 months, your body will stop funding your muscle mass, and those muscles will atrophy. But if you apply consistent, low-level friction to a specific area of your skin, the body responds with a masterful defense mechanism. When the sole of a barefoot human repeatedly strikes the uneven ground, the mechanical stress signals the basal layer of the epidermis into a state of hyperproduction. It begins aggressively manufacturing keratinocytes. These cells push upward, die, and tightly interlock to form a dense, structurally integrated biopolymer matrix on the surface of your foot. We call it a callus. I call it evolutionary Kevlar. 2 million years ago, this localized biological Kevlar was the difference between life and death. A Homo erectus could step on a sharp piece of obsidian rock, a thorny acacia branch, or a jagged animal bone, and that heavily cross-linked keratin shield would absorb the puncture force. The material would yield just enough to transmit the pressure to the nerves, as we discussed, but it would not break. The structural integrity of the human organism remained entirely uncompromised. Fast forward to the present day, and the modern consumer has developed a bizarre psychological complex regarding this protective layer. The beauty and wellness industries have somehow convinced you that thick, callous skin is unhygienic, unsightly, and indicative of a low social class. You have been taught that a perfectly healthy, fully functional foot should look exactly like a delicate, pink, squishy appendage that has never touched anything rougher than a high thread count Egyptian cotton bedsheet. So you go to the salon. You submit your feet to the pumice stone, the metal rasps, and the aggressive chemical foot peels that leave your skin shedding in horrifying sheets for a week. You look down at your raw, exposed dermis, and you feel a profound sense of cleanliness. But biologically speaking, you have not cleaned anything. You have simply demolished your own castle walls. The natural callus is not dirty. It is, in fact, a nearly impenetrable sterile barricade against the microscopic world. When you forcefully abrade that layer down to the soft, pink tissue beneath, you are creating thousands of invisible microlacerations in your skin. You are literally opening the gates. You might as well send out a formal, engraved invitation to every fungal spore and bacterial colony on the gym locker room floor, thanking them for their patience while you voluntarily dismantled your own immune security system. It is a brilliantly circular economy. The cosmetic industry charges you $50 to aggressively remove your body's natural barricade. Your newly thinned, highly vulnerable skin inevitably develops micro-tears and blisters from the sheer friction of walking to your car. The pharmaceutical industry then steps in to sell you a $20 tube of antifungal cream and a box of bandages to fix the biological breach you just paid to create. Your body only reinforces the areas it knows will face the trials of reality. By constantly scrubbing away that reinforcement, you are sending a false signal to your biology. You are telling your cellular structure, do not bother building defenses. The environment is perfectly safe. But the environment is not safe. Concrete is entirely unforgiving. Because your feet are now stripped of their evolutionary Kevlar, they are far too fragile to handle the abrasive reality of the pavement. After merely 10 minutes of walking barefoot on a sidewalk, your thoroughly exfoliated, baby-soft heels would be bleeding and blistered. And precisely this moment of self-inflicted vulnerability, is where the $200 shoe scam enters the picture. You have successfully made your feet so pathetically weak that they can no longer survive contact with the earth. Therefore, you are now completely dependent on an artificial layer of protection. You are forced to buy the massive, plush, foam-injected running shoes just to survive a walk to the grocery store. You did not buy those shoes for athletic performance. You bought them because you systematically destroyed your own biological ability to stand on the ground. Hello, we are the local foot fungus community. Thanks for removing the barricade. Welcome to Chapter 3, the impact transient or how cloud-like foam assassinates your knees. Now that your fragile, heavily exfoliated feet are encased in 3 inches of proprietary, aerospace-grade polymer foam, let us observe how you actually move through physical space. Because you cannot feel the harshness of the concrete beneath you, and because your modern shoe features a massive, elevated heel drop, you are mechanically forced to do something no prehistoric human would ever dare to do. You land directly, heavily, and repeatedly on your heel bone. If you were barefoot right now, bounding across a rocky trail, landing on your bare heel would send a jarring, excruciating shockwave straight up your shin. You would do it exactly once. You would likely scream in agony, and your central nervous system would immediately and permanently adjust your stride. You would naturally shift to landing on the ball of your foot or the midfoot. When you land on the forefoot, something magnificent happens. The impact forces your heel to drop downward in a controlled, eccentric descent. This movement stretches your calf muscle and your Achilles tendon, instantly turning your entire lower leg into a massive, energy-storing biological spring. The kinetic force of hitting the ground is absorbed, converted into elastic energy, and then seamlessly released to propel you forward into your next step. It is a zero-waste, high-efficiency mechanical loop that took natural selection over 2 million years to perfect. But you are not using that spring. You are wearing a masterpiece of modern marketing, because that thick chunk of synthetic foam under your heel absorbs the immediate, surface-level pain of the impact. Your brain gives you the green light to recklessly hammer your heel into the pavement with every single step. You feel nothing on the skin. It feels like you are walking on a cloud. It feels like absolute insulated luxury. But physics does not care about your feelings, and it certainly does not care about the marketing copy on your shoebox. The first law of thermodynamics dictates that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be altered in form or transferred. That violent kinetic energy from your body weight colliding with the earth has to go somewhere. In biomechanics, we analyze a metric called the impact transient, otherwise known as the loading rate. When you strike with your heel, the force does not get smoothly absorbed by the elastic muscles and tendons of your lower leg. Instead, a rapid, high-frequency shockwave is generated. The foam in your shoe might compress, but it does not effectively slow down the actual rate at which the force hits your skeleton. A massive vertical spike of kinetic energy shoots straight up your skeletal structure in a matter of milliseconds. It completely bypasses the natural shock absorbers of the foot and ankle, traveling directly up the rigid bone of the tibia, desperately seeking the nearest available anatomical structure to disperse its destructive energy. Congratulations! That anatomical structure is your knee. Your ultra-plush cushioning isn't absorbing shock, it is merely generously redirecting the trauma to your menisci. Let us look at the historical data. 2 million years ago, a Homo erectus hunter would engage in persistence hunting. They would track and chase an antelope for 20 miles across the uneven, brutal African savanna in the blistering heat, until the animal literally collapsed from thermal exhaustion. They did this barefoot. They did not have orthotic arch support. They did not stretch their iliotibial bands on a vibrating foam roller afterward. And they certainly did not need to ice their patellar tendons before going to sleep in a cave. Why? Because they utilized the flawless shock absorption of the human lower leg. Meanwhile, we are currently witnessing an absolute epidemic of knee osteoarthritis in the modern world. The rate of knee arthritis today is double what it was in the pre-industrial era. And before you blame it purely on old age or modern diets, evolutionary biologists have successfully controlled for those variables. Even when adjusting for longer lifespans and higher body mass indexes, our knees are degrading at an unprecedented and highly unnatural rate. We are living 40 years longer than our ancient ancestors, but we get to spend the last 20 of those years listening to our knees grind like a rusty pepper mill every time we try to stand up from our incredibly ergonomic office chair. When you heel strike in your expensive foam bricks, a force equal to about 2 to 3 times your body weight slams into your joints. If you weigh 160 pounds, that is roughly 400 pounds of force hammering into your knee cartilage, thousands of times a day, just on your casual, leisurely walk to the coffee shop. You think you are protecting your joints by purchasing maximum cushioning. In reality, your knees are just paying the biological debt incurred by the extreme pampering of your heels. Evolution designed the human knee to be a highly efficient hinge for locomotion, not a toll booth for the laziness of your feet. But as long as you keep buying those shoes, the toll must be paid in cartilage. Your knee cartilage has officially requested an early retirement. Welcome to Chapter 4, the windlass mechanism, or why your arch does not need a plastic crutch. Now that we have established exactly how your heavily cushioned shoes are systematically redirecting massive impact forces to destroy your knees, let us turn our attention to the architectural tragedy happening at the very front of your foot. Let us talk about your toes. If you observe the foot of an infant or a modern hunter-gatherer who has never worn restrictive footwear, you will notice something distinct. Their toes are spread wide apart. The widest part of a natural, healthy human foot is actually at the absolute tips of the toes. This is not some bizarre anatomical accident. This wide splay creates an incredibly stable, broad base of support. When you walk barefoot and your toes are allowed to splay naturally outward, Your big toe anchors firmly into the earth. As your body rolls forward to push off for the next step, that big toe bends backward. This simple, elegant action triggers something biomechanists refer to as the windlass mechanism. When your big toe extends upward, it violently pulls on the plantar fascia, which is the thick, fibrous band of connective tissue running underneath your arch. This tension instantly locks the bones of your midfoot into place. In a fraction of a second, your foot magically transforms from a loose, highly flexible, shock-absorbing bag of bones into a rigid, powerful lever of steel, perfectly engineered to propel you forward. It is an absolute masterpiece of natural mechanics. So how does the modern footwear industry respect this 2-million-year-old structural masterpiece? By aggressively shoving it into a triangular plastic prison. Look at your leather dress shoes. Look at your expensive running shoes. They almost entirely taper into a narrow, sharp point at the front, violently squishing your toes together like sardines in a tin can. We look back at historical practices like extreme foot binding with absolute horror, condemning them as barbaric physical mutilation. Yet we willingly cram our feet into tight, pointed toe boxes every single morning in the name of corporate business casual or elite athletic performance. By squeezing your big toe inward, a painful, deforming condition you probably know intimately as a bunion, you completely neutralize your body's ability to anchor itself to the ground. You lose your natural pronation control. Your ankle rolls inward, your unsupported arch collapses under your own body weight, and suddenly you are experiencing the searing, stabbing joys of plantar fasciitis. Because your foot can no longer physically support itself, the tiny, intrinsic muscles within your arch begin to atrophy. They literally wither away from disuse, much like if you wore a rigid neck brace for a year and wondered why your neck muscles disappeared. And what is the medical industry's brilliant, highly lucrative solution to this induced weakness? They sell you orthotic arch supports. They sell you a literal molded plastic crutch to hold up an arch that only collapsed because of the shoes they sold you in the first place. And it gets worse. Look at the side profile of your running shoe. Notice how the front heavily curves upward, lifting your toes permanently off the ground. The industry calls that a toe spring. They put it there so you can rock forward effortlessly, mostly because the thick foam of the shoe itself is too stiff to bend naturally with your foot. But by permanently propping your toes up in the air, your plantar fascia is placed in a state of constant, passive stretch. You are keeping the windlass mechanism perpetually disengaged. We are the only species on the planet arrogant enough to believe that a piece of molded polyurethane foam knows more about arch support than 2 million years of natural selection. You are essentially putting a biological suspension bridge into a straitjacket, and then you are acting absolutely shocked when the bridge collapses. Your big toe is currently serving a life sentence in a triangular prison. Welcome to Chapter 5, the Achilles spring and the karma receipt. Let us take a step back and examine the magnificent, perfectly self-sustaining economic ecosystem you have voluntarily trapped yourself inside. Let us talk about the back of your leg. The Achilles tendon in humans is a massive, thick band of tissue that is uniquely adapted for our species. It stores and releases elastic energy like a giant rubber band, making running incredibly efficient. But to function properly, this rubber band needs its full range of motion. Your $200 running shoes, and certainly your dress shoes, almost always feature a raised heel. The heel is significantly higher than the toes. This is called the heel drop. When you wear a raised heel every single day of your life, your Achilles tendon is never allowed to fully stretch. Over time, the biological tissue literally adapts to this shortened state. The tendon shrinks. Your calf muscles become chronically tight. Evolution spent 2 million years forging the Achilles tendon into a spectacular energy return system. And you spent 2 years sitting at a desk and wearing elevated foam bricks to turn it into a fragile, tight rubber band ready to snap the moment you try to play a weekend game of tennis. This is the modern karma receipt. It is a flawless supply chain of physical suffering, and you are its highest-paying customer. It begins with a $50 salon appointment, where you pay someone to aggressively scrub away your biological keratin armor. Because your skin is now paper-thin and hypersensitive, you cannot walk barefoot. So you go to a specialty sports store and drop $200 on maximum cushioned, thick-foamed running shoes with a massive heel drop and a narrow toe box. Instead of learning how to walk properly, you are using cash to bribe the shoe industry into hiding your mechanical incompetence. Now you are walking around in a sensory-deprived, triangular foam prison. You cannot feel the ground, so you violently heel strike, sending shockwaves straight into your knees. Your toes are squished, so your arch collapses. Your heel is elevated, so your Achilles tendon slowly degenerates. Then comes the final bill. You wake up with agonizing heel pain or your knee swells up after a light jog. You head to the physical therapy clinic. You spend $500 on medical consultations, ultrasound therapy, and custom plastic orthotics just to temporarily manage a mechanical injury that you systematically paid to create. You paid to remove the armor. You paid for the synthetic shoe that destroyed your natural gait. And now you are paying a medical professional to treat the chronic pain caused by your own shopping habits. Gravity is not your enemy. Gravity is a teacher, and you have been cutting class for decades. Look down at your feet. Right now, you were born with an absolute masterpiece of biomechanical engineering. For over 2 million years, the human foot was the ultimate survival tool. It was a rugged, highly sensitive, shock-absorbing, energy-returning kinetic marvel that allowed your ancestors to outrun and outlast almost any prey on the planet. It was a bridge of bone and fascia, protected by an impenetrable shield of keratin, and wired directly into your central nervous system with hundreds of thousands of microscopic sensors. But you chose comfort. You chose a sensory anesthetic. In this modern era, we wear our physical fragility as a badge of honor. You wrap your feet in synthetic foam to hide from the earth, but this softness you crave is not a luxury. It is biological decay. You are not protecting your joints. You are silencing the very nerves designed to save them. By stripping away your calluses and compressing your toes into artificial molds, you have willingly severed your connection to the physical world. You no longer walk the earth. You float numbly above it in a chemically engineered coffin for your feet. You have wrapped yourself in a false sense of security, allowing your natural armor to atrophy, your arches to collapse, and your tendons to weaken. You do not truly own your body anymore. You are simply leasing it from the footwear and medical conglomerates, paying a monthly tax in the form of expensive shoes, custom orthotics, and chronic joint pain. When you refuse to feel the ground, you reject your own physical reality. So the final question is, are you going to continue paying a premium to systematically cripple yourself? Or are you ready to finally let your bare feet touch the earth and remember what it actually feels like to be human? Take a breath. It is a harsh biological reality, but awareness is the very first step out of that triangular foam prison. Comment below, what is your worst modern footwear habit? And how much money have you thrown at it before realizing you are just fighting gravity and losing? Be honest, we are all recovering from modern convenience here. Share this video with that friend who is obsessed with those giant marshmallow running shoes before their Achilles tendon completely forgets how to do its job. And if you are ready to uncover more of the biomechanical lies we tell ourselves, make sure to watch our next breakdown, where we will discuss why your incredibly expensive ergonomic office chair is secretly destroying your spine. As for me, I will be right here, analyzing fossils so you do not have to become one prematurely. See you next time.